Hey guys, Matteo here, welcome back to a new video, and today we're going to talk about the Blackmagic Pocket 6K cinema camera, and I'm going to explain you why, in my opinion, and after 1 year of pretty intensive use, I think it's the best camera money can buy. So last year I released a video about the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, my honest opinion after 1 year, and I never thought that Blackmagic could push the envelope even further with this camera. So let's just jump into it and let's understand why I think is seriously one of the best camera out there. So why I bought the Pocket 6K in the first place, and the reason is pretty simple, mainly because I didn't want it to stick with that metabones philosophy and speed booster, because again, keep in mind the Pocket 4K at 2x crop factor. That means if you use a lens with a regular adapter, you're gonna have a 2x crop. So a 50mm is gonna get a 100mm, 35-70, and so on. So in order to get a better crop factor, you definitely need a speed booster. And if you have to get a speed booster for any kind of lenses out there, that's going to be expensive and the price is going to go up quite quickly. So in this case, I just wanted to have a mount that was working with pretty much any lenses out there. So S35 for me was a big upgrade. Honestly, I don't think anybody saw the 6K coming. I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning, as I mentioned in my last year video about the 4K, but after playing around with the camera, I just fell in love, and I think this is the best camera Blackmagic ever made. What are the improvements over the 4K then? Definitely better skin tones, and I can tell you guys, I tested this camera so many times. I played around with it with the 4K, put them side by side, I shot a bunch of different stuff. Skin tones are improved. A lot of people are still denying that, I don't know why, but they're much better, and to me they're way closer to the Alexa. So in the 4K I found them a little bit on the brownish, a little bit red side. This gets the skin tones a little bit more accurate and definitely get that Alexa look when you're talking about skin tones. So another thing they improved on the Pocket 6K is the eyelets roll off, so you're gonna have a little bit better dynamic range on this camera. It was great on the Pocket 4K as well, and one of the tests that I usually do when I talk about dynamic range, I literally go outside and I point it to something that is really bright, like bright highlights area. And when you go out there with that camera, even without an ND, sometimes you can open up the aperture maybe up until f4 or f.56. You're not gonna see the highlights clipping in the false color on the camera. It seriously takes a lot of work to overexpose the image with this camera, because the B-Rock codec together with the eyelets roll off and the dynamic range, it's seriously, you can't screw it up, and if you do that, there might be a problem. And this brings me to the last thing that I think they improved, which is the noise. So with the Pocket 4K, as already mentioned in my videos before, I found a crazy amount of noise at ISO 800 and 1000, even outdoor, even in daylight, not necessarily inside. That issue is completely gone on the Pocket 6K. I find myself shooting 1000 ISO a lot of times when I'm outdoor. I'm using it in low light as well, and I'm not noticing any crazy amount of noise. Talking about ISO and noise, even at 3200 and 5000 is still usable. I think at 3200 with a little bit of lights on the subject, it's pretty clear. You can use 3200 in daylights. If you have a heavy ND in front of it, it's gonna look great. I put it side by side with the A7S III, and I can tell you that up until 5000 ISO, this camera looks much better than the Sony. Sony gets really good at 12,800 ISO for some reason. There might be some dual native ISO, we don't know. But let's talk about the reason why I really like this camera, and I think it's a huge improvement. It's a big selling point for Blackmagic. I put it side by side with the Alexa Mini, and I'm honest with you guys, I never found a camera closer to an Alexa Mini than this camera. And I use the Alexa Mini plenty of times. I'm not saying it's an Alexa Mini, but it's the closest thing I ever used. And I know a lot of DP out there that own an Alexa Mini, they're buying a Pocket 6K because they're very easy to match. And how does it compare with the Ursa Mini G2, for example? Because a lot of people are thinking maybe about getting a Pocket to match with the G2. They're very close. I still prefer the Pocket 6K for some reason. I shot a bunch of side by side. I look at them on a 4K monitor, and I like the 6K better. The eyelets roll off is a bit smoother. I can open up, it doesn't clip as soon as the G2. In low light is way better, of course, because it has dual native ISO. The Ursa Mini G2 It's not that good after ISO 800 or maybe 1600, but if you're underexposed and you're shooting at 1600, it gets really noisy. This one doesn't have any of those problems. It retains all the color information pretty accurately, even in low light and super underexposed situation. But let's say something, this Pocket 6K is definitely closer to an Ursa Mini than a Pocket 4K. In terms of lenses option that you get with the Pocket 6K, of course you have an EF mount, so you have plenty of option, wooden camera, and I think another brand is selling a modification kit where you can actually change the mount, the EF mount with the PL mount, and it's something that I'm looking into it right now. In my opinion, this Pocket 6K works absolutely well with this Leica R, already mentioned in my video before. I love these lenses, it's everything I'm using right now. I have an 18-35 that pretty much stays in that case all the time. The other thing you have to keep in mind, guys, there's so many cinema lenses out there, like the Sigma, the Rokinon, the Tokina, the Canon, that make these beautiful cinema lenses. They're EF mount. One thing to keep in mind though, it doesn't have an EF lock mount, so that might be tricky because those lenses are heavy, and even with my Leica, sometimes they have a little bit of wiggle. I wish Blackmagic would come up with an actual camera with an EF lock mount so the lenses just stay there. And that brings me to the pros and cons of this camera. So let's start with the pros. Definitely the price, $2,000. You can't find a camera out there for that money. It shoots ProRes, it shoots 12-bit RAW internal with B-roll codec, shoots 6K up to 60 frames per second, 4K, other frame rates. You can have like literally a lot of option in terms of codec. The image quality is insane. The other pros are, as I mentioned even last year in the Pocket 4K video, the DaVinci ecosystem. So when you buy this camera, they give you for free one of the best software out there. And the other cool thing, because a lot of people ask me, how does your computer manage these 6K files with the Pocket 6K and the B-RAW? And I can tell you guys, I was able to edit in a full 6K timeline, 6K B-RAW 5x1 and 3x1 files on my MacBook Pro 16 inches, no issue at all. And this is, to me, is amazing, and it's part of the ecosystem that Blackmagic is building. So other pros we can talk about is the portability, because you can still build it up like this with a full cinema rig and a matte box and everything you want and make it look big because it's more balanced and you can work better with the camera. But you can also strip it down and have just those LP6 battery, and you can even leave the monitor home. But let's move to the cons now, what I don't like about the camera, and it's pretty much what I didn't like about the Pocket 4K, because in terms of like form factor is the exact same thing. I don't like that it still looks like a DSLR. I wish they could put it in a little cube, even though at that point you're not gonna be able to get that nice 5 inches monitor in the back, because I find myself using that monitor all the time. It's very accurate and it's a beautiful monitor, and I'm so glad that Blackmagic put it in there. So if I had to have a cube like a Komodo, like a Kinefinity or a Z-Cam, I won't be able to use it without any accessories like I do with this camera. Another thing that I don't really like is that crop factor. It's an S35 sensor, 1.56. It's a little bit too much in my opinion, and I wish it could be like 1.3 or 1.4. So another point I wanted to make is, what is the competition offering right now at the same price? What really blocked me so far to try something else is the ecosystem, because I use DaVinci for all my work, so I can't really use any other camera that does maybe ProRes RAW. So it's mainly about the workflow and the ecosystem, and also the image quality. I've been testing the A7S III, I've been testing a bunch of other cameras, and the feel that I got is they always look a little bit too digital. And if I have to be honest, I don't believe what Blackmagic says about the Pocket 6K. I don't think he has 13 stops of dynamic range, I think he has more. I put it side by side with the Ursa Mini G2, which is rated at 15, and this was looking pretty much the same. So I doubted this thing has 13 stops of dynamic range, and when you put it side by side with other mirrorless camera, you can kind of tell. It's really hard to find, I think, on the market something that gives you such a great software experience inside the camera, because the operating system on the Blackmagic is one of the best, if not the best on the market right now. Even better than ARRI or RED, in my opinion. They give you this 12-bit RAW at 60p, 48p, full colors inside the camera, EF mount, Super 35, mini XLR, full HDMI, mic, headphone jack, filming RAW internally without having to go through a recorder that record ProRes RAW, that only Final Cut can read, and this kind of stuff. Again, Blackmagic is still doing this thing where it's giving filmmaker the best tool for the lowest price. So those are the reasons why I think this is the best camera money can buy in 2020. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you find all this information helpful. If you have any questions, just drop a comment below, send me an email. I'm always available to answer any question you have. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.